It's good to have you all here today. Happy Thanksgiving. It's the big Thanksgiving week, so we're all glad that you're here today for that. I also want to thank you for being generous. I will say that we haven't even really gotten into the Christmas season yet, the generous season of generosity, but you're doing that. So we had a great week of Family Promise this week. It was fantastic. We had, I think, 3 to 4 families that were here throughout the week. So thank you for making meals, spending the night, and thank you for doing laundry. If you have a chance to do that, there are some bags full of laundry out there. I think there's maybe a few left still in the lobby, so take those home, wash them, bring them back. We'd appreciate that. Also, thanks for all your generosity and giving to the Arizona Reservation Ministry. One of our members named Mike had to take 2 trips up to Globe with all the stuff, the blankets you guys made, all the stuff you put together for that. So thank you for that. That's going to be really helpful as it gets cold up there now. So thanks for all that work you did there. And by the way, Mike also wrote an article for Lookout Magazine, and that link is on our church app and on Facebook if you're interested in learning more about what's going on at Ben Globe. And then finally, we actually have something new happening. Our new series starts next week. It's called Born Identity. As we look at who this Jesus is, who we celebrate at Christmas, and our identity in light of his coming. And as part of that, we're going to be doing a new little project here, and that is we're going to be partnering with Foster Arizona. So Kim Vihan, who leads worship every week, does a great job and just really leads us in powerful worship each week, is also the president and the founder of Foster Arizona, helping kids find those forever families. And so we're going to be working with her to help give kids an experience in January to go up to the wildlife park in Arizona to help kids get there and help. We'll get tickets and all that kind of stuff. So you'll see a huge Christmas tree out in the lobby with little animals on it, and that'll help you experience that moment of being able to help kids in Arizona. So I hope you'll take part in that as well. For more information on that, again, you go to our Facebook page or our app. There's a little link there where Kim was on Arizona 3 News recently, and you can see that too. So check that out. So a lot of cool stuff going on as we head into the Christmas season. But today, we got to focus on Thanksgiving. And to start with that, I want to talk today about tables. Now, most of you who know me know I grew up in Indiana. And when I was in high school, I was a farmhand. I was a free farmhand because my girlfriend was a farmer's daughter, so I was free labor. However, I also got a chance to go and go to Thanksgiving meals with the family, which was really kind of cool. And most of you who grew up in the Midwest kind of know what that's like. You gather at someone's house, usually a grandparent's house. In this case, it was the farmhouse. And we'd hang out and just eat hors d'oeuvres and stuff and watch some worthless football game, usually the Lions and the Packers. No one really cared about that. So we'd watch that game, and then it was dinner time. And they call you into dinner. And as a high school student, that's a moment of identity, a moment of decision. It's going to define you for the next year, because when you go to that doorway, when they call you there are standing before you two tables, right? There's the one table that's got the crystal and the silver and the mahogany and that big fancy runner and the candles and all that stuff. And then there is this table. Right, this table is usually a card table. It's wiggly, and it's got like plates with kids' faces on them. It's got Tupperware so you don't break anything, and things are sealed up so they don't spill. Right, what would he call this table? The kids' table, right? And you're sitting there as a high school student figuring out, am I going to be at the big table this year with the real mashed potatoes? Over here with the tater tots. Where am I going to be? And you had that really kind of scary moment. Who else been there? Okay, a few of you know what I'm talking about. Well, that's just kind of this moment. But I think today we're going to talk about the fact that we can learn from both kinds of tables, because sharing meals plays a special role in our lives. And I don't mean just getting food. I mean, food is more than fuel. Yeah, we need good food, we need nutrition and all that stuff, but meals are something different. We share meals around tables with people we care about, with our family, with our friends. Around tables, we share stories. We share the past and things that have happened to us. We share our dreams for the future, places we want to go someday. We share our struggles. We share our victories. We share our lives. We share prayer all around tables. And this idea of a shared meal around a table is uniquely human. I don't care what Zootopia and Lady and the Tramp and Ratatouille says. Humans are the ones that take time to share meals with each other around tables. So I want us to think about that and how God sees tables, because actually they're pretty important to God too. The first thing we find in the Bible about sharing meals is that they're meant for us to celebrate. We celebrate around tables. In the book of Isaiah, way back in the Old Testament, it says this: "On this mountain, the Lord of hosts will make for all peoples a feast of rich food, a feast of well-aged wines, of rich food filled with marrow, and of well-aged wines strained clear." It's this idea that God would one day, when there'd be peace, people would be together, and God would prepare a meal, and we'd be there with God. God would be with us at the table. We just finished talking about this a little bit in our series Endgame. We talked about the second coming of Jesus, the end of the world, and we said that victory, that celebration is often seen in terms of a meal. And it wasn't because we're hungry. In fact, it says in the Bible that in heaven we're not going to be hungry. Revelation 7 says, "They will hunger no more and thirst no more." So we're not hungry, not thirsty. Then why in the world did God have a banquet or a meal seen as this great celebration of what it means to celebrate with God? It's because it's not about the food. It's about the people that you're celebrating with. That's how God sees it. We have the same idea in several parables of Jesus. In one in particular, we have a king who's preparing this great wedding banquet for his son, huge party. And he sends out invitations to all of his friends. He says, "I want you to come to this huge banquet to celebrate with my son who's getting married." And instead of coming, his friends send some pretty lame excuses. One of them says, I just bought some land. I got to go see it. Dude, it's land. It's not going to go anywhere. You can go see it tomorrow. It's an excuse. Another guy says, "Hey, I just bought some oxen. I want to go try them out." Hey, that can wait till tomorrow? But the guy just sends this lame excuse. And so the king gets angry, and he says to his servants, I want you to go out and invite the people that usually don't get invited to these things. In Luke 14, it says, go out at once into the streets and the lanes of the town and bring in the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame. The people that are usually stuck at the kids' table, he wants to bring to his table. And it's still not full, so he's going, invite everybody. People like you and me. Invite them to my table to share. We have this image that God wants us at his table. He wants to hear our stories, spend time with us. It's not about the food, it's about the people around the table. Which that means, if we're at God's table, it's going to be a pretty interesting table with all kinds of different plates and bowls and food. In fact, how many here, honestly, got to be honest, would actually order Brussels sprouts at a restaurant? Raise your hand. A couple. I don't get you people, but that's okay. How many of you would choose to order sushi at a restaurant? A few more. See, I'm more the kind of guy that if I'm paying you, cook the food. That's it's part of the deal, so I probably wouldn't do that. How many of you do not like bacon? Really? Dude, I don't get you at all. Right? But here's the thing. We're all pretty diverse people, right? Did you know that God gave us 10,000 taste buds? 10,000. That's a lot of diverse tastes. We have entire TV channels based on food and how we prepare it and what it tastes like. And there's something great about that diversity, about trying something new, although that's not me. If you know me pretty well, you know that I'm not a try it kind of guy. I stick to what I know. I'm more the food is fuel kind of guy. I know what I want. I know what the food, the macros are, the protein, carbs, and fats. I know what that's like. And so I get the same thing at the same restaurants all the time. Always do. Always have. Chicken salad, boom, there you go. But my wife, Stacy, is the opposite. She's into the diverse thing. She likes to try new stuff. Right? And everything. She goes to a restaurant that she's been to, and she'll spend an hour on the menu looking over the same thing she's always seen, trying to try something new and try something different. That actually, to be honest, is rough on our marriage. Because, I'm serious, because what she does is this, and a lot of you guys especially know what I'm talking about probably. What she does is this, and she'll say, hey Frank, tell you what, why don't you order the Brussels sprouts, and I'll order the sushi, and we'll split it. I don't want either of those things. In fact, I want to buy what I want and eat all of it myself. So that's my meal. And I'm thinking back, where in the world in our wedding vows is that listed? Right? Love, honor, cherish, I got that. It doesn't say anything about, I got to split my food with you. Right? So anyway, that kind of gets in the way, but I do appreciate her diversity, because when I do try something new, sometimes I like it, and that's not a bad thing. But we're going to be at tables this year, and with a lot of different people. And in fact, God's table is going to be diverse. In Revelation 7, it says this, and I looked, and there was a great multitude that no one could count, from every nation, from all tribes and peoples and languages, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, robed in white. Here's all these different people from different languages and tribes and nations. It's going to be a pretty interesting table where we celebrate with God. And so we need to practice that now. When you get to those Thanksgiving tables on Thursday, you probably see family you haven't seen in a while, with different views, different ideas, some diversity in your thoughts. My advice to you is listen before you give them your particular view. Because sometimes when we listen and accept people are different than us, we learn about ourselves. We see ourselves through their eyes. We see them maybe a bit differently. And maybe we learn something. Maybe we like Brussels sprouts. Who knew? That's another thing that this table does of God. He uses it to teach. How many of you, when you were growing up, studied at the kitchen table? Yeah, okay, look, I still do. I have an office at this church with a nice desk. I have an office at home with a nice desk. But where do I study a lot of the times? At the kitchen table. or over here at Andy's, one of these tables over here. I think part of it is because when we learn, we want to be with other people. Even when we're studying by ourselves, we like to have people around us. When I was at Purdue, no one studied at the engineering library. Nobody. No one studied at the physics library. They were boring places. They were sterile with boring books. Where'd they go to study? The student union or a coffee shop. Or they went to the big library where everyone was hanging out. They wanted to be with people. I think we learn better when we're around other folks. One time, Jesus was invited to a meal with a lot of different people. It was a guy named Simon, and Simon was a religious leader called a Pharisee, and a pretty wealthy guy. So he invites Jesus to his meal, not really to welcome Jesus, but to kind of keep an eye on him, learn about this guy. So Jesus comes to this guy's meal, and they're at a place called a triclinium. And a triclinium was a Roman room that had 3 couches. The word tri meaning 3, clinium for leaning. So you had these 3 benches or pillowed raised areas. Like this is a Roman triclinium here, an ancient one, where you can see where they lay on these raised areas on blankets or on pillows, and the food's in the center. Okay? And sometimes these tricliniums would actually be on the street, like a patio restaurant. So folks could walk by, and here's one in Petra in modern day Jordan. So there's 3 raised areas, and they all lean towards the center. People could walk by and see the party, see what's going on. Well, one time at this Simon's house, Jesus is there leaning on these pillows, eating his food, and a woman who is not welcome to the party, not invited to the party, shows up. And she kind of sneaks in on the side. You can kind of get in the side there, right, and get to the back wall. Well, she kind of does that. And it says in Luke 7, this. It says, now there was a woman who was publicly a sinner. So everyone knew who she was, right? She knew, they knew that she's a sinner lady, right? Learning that Jesus was reclining at the table in the Pharisee's home, she brought an alabaster jar of ointment, some really expensive ointment in a really expensive jar. And standing behind him at his feet, weeping, she began to wet his feet with her tears and to dry them with the hair of her head. She continued kissing his feet and anointing them with the ointment. So she has this great act of compassion and humility. She goes in, doesn't want to be noticed, doesn't want to make a big scene, just kind of sneaks in the side, along the back, and everybody's leaning forward to the table, and their feet are in the back, and she can come around and get to his feet, and she gets there, she's going to anoint him with this expensive oil, but she sees something. His feet are still dirty. But usually when you go to a person's house, they would wash your feet or have a servant wash your feet. That was Simon's responsibility. He invited Jesus, but he didn't welcome him because he's still got dirty feet. He didn't really take care of Jesus. So this woman sees his dirty feet. She has no water, has no towel, so what does she do? She uses her own tears, her own hair to wash his feet. She does what Simon should have done with all that she had. Well, Simon sees this. And now when the Pharisee who had invited Jesus saw it, he said to himself, if this man were a prophet, he would have known who and what kind of woman it is who is touching him, that she is a sinner. Right? If Jesus knew, right? If he's a prophet, he'd know what she's like. And we all know how we treat sinners at the table. We know how we treat them. We get rid of them. We exclude them. We humiliate them. We push them away. That's what we do to sinners. See, this woman was not welcomed and not invited. Jesus was invited, but he wasn't welcomed. But in this moment, things change. He doesn't see her as a sinner. Jesus sees her as a sister or a daughter who has left the table years ago, but now wants to come back and be with Jesus at his table. And Simon is called out by Jesus for his attitude. Jesus calls him out in a very powerful way. And in the Greek text, it's kind of emphatic, and I kind of highlighted that here for you so you can see it. In verse 44, Jesus says to Simon, I entered your house. I came to your house, and you gave me no water for my feet, But with her tears, she wet my feet with her hair, and she dried them. You gave me no kiss, but from the time I entered, she has not stopped kissing my feet. You did not anoint my head with oil, but she has anointed my feet with ointment. Therefore I tell you, her sins, which are many, have been forgiven, since she has shown great love. But the one to whom little is forgiven loves little. Then he said to her, your sins have been forgiven. Jesus was invited but not welcomed. She was not invited, but she was welcomed by Jesus. See, it doesn't matter if it's a big fancy table like Simon's or a kid's table, a card table like this. It doesn't matter if it's Tupperware or silverware. What matters is the people that are sitting around it. Jesus welcomed this woman back because she came back to the table. Which brings me to the last thing about tables and God, and that is, what do you do with the leftovers? Right? We're going to have a bunch of leftovers come Friday, a bunch of turkey sandwiches floating around for lunch. So what do you do with the leftovers? I think there's a lesson there too, because Tupperware says leftovers. So in one story, there's actually a couple of these stories, there's a bunch of people following Jesus in Galilee, thousands of them, and they're hearing his teaching, they're being healed, they're being taken care of by Jesus. And at one point, on several occasions actually, it runs late. They get hungry. And the disciples see all these people that have no food. They're thinking, well, they ought to take care of that. They should have brought a lunch. So they say to Jesus, hey, look, Jesus, you need to send them away. Send them away so they can get some food because they're not prepared for this. And Jesus turns to them and says, no. Don't send them away. You feed them. They're like, man, with what, right? We got no food for thousands and thousands of people. And so they find a young boy who's got a lunch of 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. If you know the story, Jesus tells everyone to sit down, and he blesses the food, breaks it, and they pass it out. And lo and behold, it feeds everybody. And afterwards, guess what happens? There's leftovers. In one story, there's 7 baskets full of leftovers. In another story, there's 12. Lots of fish sandwiches for tomorrow. But here's the part that's kind of new to me, is that in each of these stories, it says that after this happens, they all get into a boat, Jesus and the disciples, and they go across the Galilee to go to a different region. And listen to what happens in the conversation on the boat. This one's in Matthew 16. When the disciples reached the other side, they had forgotten to bring any bread. Jesus said to them, watch out. Beware of the yeast of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. They said to one another, it's because we have no bread. Right? They think Jesus is talking about their teaching. They think Jesus is upset because they forgot to bring bread with them on their little trip. And then Jesus has kind of like this dad moment. Right? He turns to them and says, are you kidding me? Did you not forget what just happened? We fed thousands and thousands of people and you helped pass it out and collect leftovers. Remember that? He says to them this in Mark 8. When I broke the 5 loaves for the 5,000, how many baskets full of broken pieces did you collect? Huh, guys? And they said, 12. And the 7 for the 4,000, how many baskets full of broken pieces did you collect? They said, 7. And then he said to them, do you not yet understand? Don't you get it? It just happened and you're worried about bread. He's like, look, you cannot outgive God. He knows our needs. He knows our struggles. He knows how to provide, has the power to do so. So don't think you can outgive God. And here's the cool part that actually I missed. Because I always wondered, what happened to the leftovers? You had all these leftovers for these people. Well, obviously, the disciples did not take it with them because they had no bread. They must have shared even what they had. See, the leftovers were often given to the servers at a party. But the disciples gave that away too. But there's something about leftovers that says we need to share. There's another meal here, another meal we can share with other people. Don't be afraid to share everything, even the leftovers. Because the bottom line is you can't outgive God. In Galilee, there's a church that's been there since the 4th century to commemorate this event, the feeding of the 5,000. It's called the Church of the Multiplication. This is a picture of the inside of it. And inside it, you see this table at the very end, right? A table. Under the table is an ancient mosaic, and this is it here. It remembers the feeding of the 5,000. How many fish do you see? 2. How many loaves of bread do you see? 4. Well, wait a minute, there's 5 loaves of bread. They messed up, made a mistake. Well, not really. Zoom back out again, and that mosaic is underneath that table. What's that table used for, do you think? Communion, the Lord's Supper, the Lord's table. That table where Jesus said to his disciples on the night he's betrayed, "Take and eat. This is my body, which is given for you." And he broke bread and passed it around. That 5th loaf that's missing in that mosaic, that 5th loaf is that table. A table that we're invited to. A table we celebrate at each week. A table that Jesus calls us to celebrate when he returns. A table that he invites everybody to, from all tribes and nations and peoples. He invites sinners, like that woman, like you and me, to that table. It's a table that never runs out. A table where he shares even his own life with us and calls us to do the same. So we're going to share at a table this week. Enjoy that time. Celebrate those moments. Remember to thank God for the people that you're going to share it with. And thank God that he is there with you as well. Let's pray together.